Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om. Om Namah Shri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Surai Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swami Tapaharine. We are studying Swamiji's Karma Yoga, Chapter 8. This is 21st class. The ideal of Karma Yoga. So, as I mentioned in the last class, this chapter is more like a synopsis of the whole Karma Yoga. Swamiji takes up main and some of the important points of the Karma Yoga, which were detailed, which were considered and explained in detail. Of course, Swamiji gives new ideas and new explanations also. So, we see. The grandest idea in the religion of the Vedanta is that we may reach the same goal by different paths. And these paths I have generalized into 4, viz. Those of work, love, psychology and knowledge. But you must at the same time remember that these divisions are not very marked and quite exclusive of each other. Each blends into the other. But according to the type which prevails, we name the divisions. So, in the religion of Vedanta, that is the term Swamiji has used, which is synonymous with Hinduism in this context. So, we see this unique consideration, which is hardly to be seen in other religious traditions. That is, it recognizes the variety of people and their temperaments, their aptitude to work and to understand, all these faculties of emotion and knowledge. We see these differences, that these are there in the society, among people, and this fact the Hinduism and especially the Vedanta recognizes, and accordingly we have various paths suited to their mental faculty, so that to lead them onward towards the goal, that is higher evolution, or say it freedom or bhakti, mukti, in various ways. So this unique feature, so because of this, Swamiji calls it the grandest idea in the religion of Vedanta, that the goal can be reached by various paths. Okay? And these Swamiji generalizes into the 4, that of work, that is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and the path of psychology, that is mental mind control, or the yoga, Patanjali Yoga, Raja Yoga and others, and the path of knowledge, that is Jnana Yoga, are the main Vedantic path. Okay? So, but these, Swamiji says, these are not marked and exclusive. These are like depending on what mental faculty a person is predominantly he holds, he or she. So depending on that, the person takes that path, and in spite of, and even in above that, not that somebody practices only Jnana Yoga only in exclusion to the other paths. They may also practice other ones, but the main or the central path will be one of them. Or sometimes if the adhikari is multifaceted, or let's say well gifted, they may follow, they may excel in all the paths. That is the idea. So we see, it is not that you can find men who have no other faculty than that of work, nor that you can find men who are no more than devoted worshippers only, nor that there are men who have no more than mere knowledge. These divisions are made in accordance with the type or the tendency that may be seen to prevail in a man. We have found that in the end, all these 4 paths converge and become one. All religions and all methods of work and worship lead us to the one and the same goal. So, the same as I said. Some people usually may not generally seen thing is they practice one or more of these. Actually many karma yoga being the common one. Most of the people in the before they start the spiritual journey seriously they would have gone through karma yoga, at least the intermediate stages of purification and perfection. Most without almost we can say without exception they go through karma yoga part, at least part of it and then take on their own specialized paths and they continue, and all of them lead to the same and one goal. That is and depending on their own path they give different names and conceptualize accordingly. Somebody will call it nirvana, somebody will call it bhakti, the parabhakti, or the living with God. Somebody will call it mukti, somebody will call it freedom, or somebody will call it realizing one's own nature or the self, Atman, etc. So these are one and the same. At least we will see in the next para, there is one essential nature of all these, and that is freedom. So Swamiji highlights this point. Continuing, I have already tried to point out that goal. It is freedom as I understand it. So all of these paths lead to that one and same goal, and the essential feature of that is they may call it various ways, and experiences also could slightly differ depending on the cultural makeup and the path they follow. But the one common feature is they all feel that higher and the pure freedom, the absolute freedom. Everything that we perceive around us is struggling towards freedom, from the atom to the man, from the insentient lifeless particles of matter to the highest existence on earth, the human soul. The whole universe is in fact the result of this struggle for freedom. In all combinations, every particle is trying to go on its own way, to fly from the other particles, but the other particles are holding it in check. So this point Swamiji had mentioned earlier, that is everything in the Jagat, in the Srishti, in the world we see around us is tending towards freedom. Both living people, living beings, as well as non-living things in the Jagat, we see them tending towards freedom. Swamiji has given some of the examples. Let us say the example of the combinations. We living beings, we understand what it means, that they are going towards freedom, that we know. Even when an ignorant people, ignorant in the sense of the spiritual knowledge, those who are not spiritually educated or not spiritually aware, even those people, whatever their actions are, unconsciously they are all tending towards that. They may take a wrong thing. We will see. Swamiji mentions this point also a little further, that even the ignorant person, most ignorant, let's say Swamiji uses the case of a robber. Even when he is robbing, he is actually trying in some way or the other, unconsciously or consciously, towards some kind of freedom. Even his activity is for, right? Similarly, now in case of insentient things, that is matter, dead matter, what does freedom in that case? So 2-3 examples Swamiji has given. One is all the combined things. Let's say take a stone or mountain. There are it's made of so many elements, molecules, atoms we can say, but they are all held together. Now Swamiji says when the force that is held together is withdrawn, so it is bound to fall to pieces. And similarly in turn we can say further. So elsewhere Swamiji said Jagat or Srishti or this universe is a disturbed state of equilibrium. That is, the things were, all this matter was in some state of equilibrium that has been disturbed, and now it is trying to regain that lost equilibrium or the lost natural state. This is put in the modern language, but if we use the Vedantic or the Sankhya language, we see the Prakriti or the Avyakta in which there is no differentiation, nothing will be there, no srishti. Then the three gunas, the sattva, rajas, tamas, they are in the equilibrium, and there is no any predominance of one or the other, so there is no srishti, there is no jagat, jagat worlds and the people, living people. But when the srishti, the cycle of srishti kicks in, starts, then the gunas, the equilibrium is disturbed, and then starting with the sukshma bhutas, panchamahabhutas, sukshma in their form, they come out, and then so evolution starts from there, and then the gross universe appears. And this is the non-natural state, or the state which is come out from the natural or the equilibrium state. Now Swamiji says it is tending to go back to that. So, and it aligns with the Vedantic or the Hindu idea, that is the Srishti is cyclic. So Srishti, Sthiti and Pralaya. So this, the force which has disturbed and then brought this into this manifested state of the Jagat. So that state, that force is still working, and it is trying to complete the circle and go back to the original state, original natural state, or the equilibrium state. So that agrees with this explanation. That is, so in the earlier chapter we saw this movement is in the circle. So these, even these ancient things like the planets, the stars, all these, they are also tending towards that freedom. So that is the underlying point, and Swamiji, so deriving from that, says some things here. So we see everything we perceive around us. What do we perceive around us? We see living things as well as non-living things. So they are all struggling towards freedom. Starting from lifeless particles of matter to highest existence on earth, that is the highest beings, that is on earth is human beings. All of them are tending towards freedom. Our earth is trying to fly away from the sun, and the moon from the earth. Everything that has a tendency to infinite dispersion. All that we see in the universe, as far its basis, this one struggle towards freedom. If it is under the impulse of this tendency that the saint prays and the robber robs. So the same idea continued. The planets, Swami says, the planets, stars, all are tending towards infinite dispersion. Why infinite dispersion? Because they have originated from some equilibrium state and they have to go back to that. So, and if there is no obstruction, they want to go back to the state. So this, in a way, so Swamiji uses this infinite, this phrase, that is infinite dispersion. All that we see in the universe, as per its basis, there is one struggle towards freedom. One struggle. So all these movements, all the movements in the universe, everything. So whatever, all the experiences, all the works, activities of human beings, living beings, all of them, they have at the source this tendency, this force working, that is to lead the movement towards the final thing, that is to complete the cycle, as I said earlier. And that when it is seen in the day-to-day activities, it could mean something else, but the fundamental force which is working is, and the goal of that is to complete this circle, that is to go back to freedom from where it originated, right? So here Swamiji says, under the impulse of this tendency for freedom, the saint prays and the robber robs. So here this saint praying and robber robs. So it's like the two extremes of the human activity. That is the one highest moral person and the lowest on the other on the lowest rung. So what does it represent? It represents a full spectrum of human activity. So all of this, Swamiji, with using these two terms, implied all the whole spectrum of human activity. So the saint praying for what? Either he is praying for the spiritual evolution, or he is praying for probably the others, for the society. So in which case, both the cases are leading towards higher things and higher movement. And a robber is robbing for what? Probably he is robbing for some of his relative things. But there also we'll see how it is connected to his tendency towards freedom. When the line of action taken is not a proper one, we call it evil. And when the manifestation of it is proper and high, we call it good. But the impulse is the same, the struggle towards freedom. So it is the same force working in this. So, and depending on the person or the relative context where it is manifested, the movement could be one way or the other, and it is a subjective thing, right? The saint is oppressed with the knowledge of his condition of bondage, and he wants to get rid of it. So he worships God. The thief is oppressed with the idea that he does not possess certain things, and he tries to get rid of that want to obtain freedom from it. So he steals. Freedom is the one goal of all nature, sentient and insentient, and consciously or unconsciously, everything is struggling towards that goal. So you see, whole thing is summed up here. The saint wants, he is conscious of the bondage of the mind, so he is praying for it. So all his activity, his practice, his movement, most of his life, except probably we can say the bare bodily maintenance, whole energy is directed towards that, to obtain freedom from the bondages. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the robber, the most less developed, we can say, spiritually and even knowledge wise. So he is oppressed with certain idea, that is, he probably doesn't process certain things, or probably is greedy of some things. So he is stealing, and what does he, and why does he steal? So of course here it is a philosophical language is used to say, to get rid of the idea that he doesn't possess certain things. That also is true. Put in a different perspective, we can say this also. But usually the robber doesn't think all these things. It is his priority to go on doing those things. So right. So the freedom which the saint seeks is very different from that which the robber seeks. The freedom loved by the saint leads him to the enjoyment of infinite, unspeakable bliss, while that on which the robber has set his heart only forges other bonds for his soul. So, though the one force is working, but the way it is applied or the way it is employed, that decides so where the person is leading to. In the case of saint, because he is conscious, he knows how to, he understands his condition, and he understands what he wants. So he is employing or directing his energy or this tendency in the right direction. So that is leading him in the right direction and to the right things. That is towards spiritual evolution and progress, and or we can say higher knowledge. And thus he progresses, and ultimately in no time or in a short time he will reach the goal, that is mukti or freedom, absolute freedom. But on the other hand, the robber, ignorant, doesn't understand what his condition is. So he only goes by what he understands in his context, or probably what he understands seeing the environment. Accordingly he goes on. So the classic cases here in this context is one in our own this thing. One is Angulimala and the Buddha, and the other is Valmiki and sage Narada. So in the case of Valmiki, Narada asked him why Valmiki was a highway robber, and not just single. He had a band of people to plunder people and plunder the traders, and even sometimes some trading colonies also. So when he is confronted by sage Narada, he could hardly give any answer to some of these thoughtful questions. Narada starts with simple but thoughtful questions, but he was surprised. But somebody could, he could look at a condition of our life from even this angle. He was surprised, and he defends of course we know, those who know, like he was asking about what will, whether it is true, that whether it is a virtuous act that somebody is doing, etc., what he is doing, that robbing and certain, sometimes even killing people also, he didn't mind. He thought it's fine. Nobody told him otherwise, probably. Even if somebody told, but he never bothered. But now, so when the pertinent questions were asked, whether he is doing all these things, whether for whom he is doing, whether they will share in these things, etc., some questions come. But these simple but thoughtful questions made him think. And then when he was made to see the truth, at least the partial, so then, etc., so it goes on. So the point here is, they just go on. They don't understand these things, so they require that. But of course, experience, a little experience is required. That's what that experience is the only teacher, Swamiji says. So they have to learn by experience and in the world. So continuing, there is to be found in every religion the manifestation of this struggle towards freedom. So we saw the idea of freedom, and so this idea of freedom is common. This concept is there in all the religions. In one form or the other, they embody this, and then the path, the practices, the customs, the moral values, all are based on this central idea, this fundamental idea, that is to lead the people towards higher freedom, that is spiritual freedom. It is the groundwork of all morality, of unselfishness, which means getting rid of the idea that men are the same as their little body. When we see a man doing good work, helping others, it means that he cannot be confined within the limits of me and mine. So this idea, this concept of tendency or the struggle towards freedom, the movement towards freedom, this is common to all religious traditions, nay, not just religious traditions, even other ethical systems also, but they themselves are grown out of the main religious traditions. Now, we see that Swamiji says, this idea of freedom and the tendency to lead the people towards higher freedom, that is the groundwork based on which all the systems of morality, ethics, values, and then traditional constructs are all built on that. And when I see a man doing a good work or helping others, it means that he cannot be confined within the limited circle of me and mine. That means his mind has expanded. His so-called concept of me and mine, that is I and whom he calls as his own people, are usually, generally speaking, in the ordinary people, they consider, let us say, in a family, somebody say, if something is given to the brother or sister, somebody, it's okay, it's our own people, they think. If it is to be given to others, they think. So there we can see the concept of me and mine, there is a bridge, the gradation is starting there. Let's say, so if it is relatives, they may with little thinking, calculation they may give, right? And you go one step more further, they may then, so they'll be very careful. They may sometimes give as dana. So then the concept they'll bring in. Something should be there to define it. And if the person is miserly or not, are very strict about these things, so then he may not, in most cases. So it goes on. So you see, we can easily see this concept of me and mine. If it is one's own family, so no problem. Even if there is wastage, also no problem. All is fine. But also, but of course, there are even very, what is that, rustic people, for them, oneself alone is everything, at the cost of whatever. But usually we see, even among the robbers, we see the concept of group. So there also me and mine is there. It is, confinement to oneself is a very rare idea. Even there, my friends, my group, that idea will be there, usually speaking. So this me and mine, when the person starts to evolve, so we see this notion getting broader and broader. And so when it has reached higher rungs, we see the people when they have, let us say, reached spiritual evolution, spiritually, when they see the ego vanishing, or at least becoming thinner, or to say their notion becoming very wide, we see that people seeing oneness, or oneness with other living beings, not just conceptually, like sharing things, etc. That also is true, but we see when the classical examples talk, those who are spiritually evolved or realized, let us say, they could feel the even the emotional needs of others. Let's say, so in Sri Ramakrishna's case, when he was walking on the, when somebody was walking on the lawn, on the grass in the temple garden, even though he was in the room, he could feel somebody is trampling on himself. So he could see the pain which the other living beings which are close by, they are experiencing. See, even Swamiji himself had, or some used to be tend to identify with the cosmic life, so much so that the pain, the massive earthquake, the volcano, sorry, at one part in some other continent, that could raise him from sleep, because there was some part of huge humanity was suffering through because of a great calamity. So he woke up from at the dead of night. So his ego is attuned, or is so close to the cosmic life. This like merging with the cosmic life, or the individual ego disappearing. So we have many things, and the reflection of this, Sharada Mother in her last message, she was saying, try to make the whole world one's own, nobody is a stranger, the whole is one's own, whole world is one's own. This is a reflection put in the practical, in the practice, the same idea which is reflected here, that is whole world is one's own. That means all living beings are to be considered as one own, and it is so. Is it not? In the strict sense, Vedantic sense, all living beings are the reflection of one's own Atman. Is it not? So it is the one life manifesting in all the life forms. When that is the case, when a person reaches the spiritual illumination, he feels oneness with other living beings. So that is the thing implied here. That is when the limited circle of me and mine is gone. Swamiji says that when somebody is trying to help others, that means that he cannot be confined within the limited notion of this me and mine. There is no limit to this getting out of selfishness. All the great systems of ethics preach absolute unselfishness as the goal. Supposing this absolute unselfishness can be realized by a man, what becomes of him? He is no more the little Mr. So-and-so. He has acquired infinite expansion. The little personality which he had before is now lost to him forever. He has become infinite. And the attainment of this infinite expansion is indeed the goal of all religions and of all moral and philosophical teachings. So here, you see, Swamiji uses some terms. Great systems of ethics, that refers to various religions and philosophical systems. And the other term Swamiji used, absolute unselfishness. That means the egoism is completely erased, and the person only the limiting notions, all the limiting notions, ideas, and the emotions within the mind are gone, and the only person is there, but he feels oneness with the whole existence, that is whole world. That is the thing. So Swamiji says there is no limit to this getting out of selfishness, or there is no limit to this unselfishness. So somebody can say, what does this mean? No limit to becoming unselfishness. That means then there is no limit to, this path to reach the freedom. Somebody can say, no, it is not in that sense. When technically speaking, this limiting ideas of in the mind, that is raga and dvesha, when they are put in the technical language of Patanjali Yoga, the kleshas which bind the soul, or or limit the consciousness of the person, when they are burnt, the ignorance is gone, the bondage is gone. Okay? So with that the freedom is obtained. That is certain. There is a limit to that. Okay? So it is as scientific and rational as that. Now what is implied is this: there is no limit to unselfishness. So here, even on one, let's say, is there any limit to God's qualities? No, because God is Ananta, so qualities of God are Ananta, and unselfishness are the, or to put it in other terms, is feeling oneness with the whole existence is what is unselfishness, is it not? Put in other words. So there is no, because existence is infinite, God is infinite, existence is infinite. So this feeling of oneness with the existence becomes infinite also. So that's how there is no limit to this absolute becoming, there is no limit to this getting out of selfishness. So Swamiji used that terms in that way. Okay? All great systems have this unselfishness or absolute unselfishness as the goal. So if somebody reaches this absolute unselfishness, what becomes of it? So is no more the middle Mr. So-and-so, he has become infinite expansion. What is infinite expansion? Not the body. Of course, it is spiritual and mental expansion is meant. In mental expansion meaning these qualities of compassion, sympathy, oneness, the me and mine. And when it on the spiritual meaning, so he feels he has realized oneness with the God or oneness with the Atman or the, let's say, so Buddhists will use a different thing. So that spiritual expansion, and mentally they feel oneness with the other living beings and the universe. So the little personality which had before is now lost to him forever. He has become infinite, and the attachment of this infinite attainment of this is the goal of all religions and all moral philosophical teachings. Continuing, the personalist, when he hears this idea philosophically put, gets frightened. At the same time, if he preaches morality, he after all teaches the very same idea himself. He puts no limit to the unselfishness of man. Here, the personalist, that means somebody who thinks that God and human beings are persons, believes that God and man are persons. They are usually, these beliefs are found in theistic religions. Hinduism, though it is theistic, is also impersonal, because God, the ultimate reality is a principle, is an impersonal thing, right? So Hinduism or the Vedanta is both theistic as well as impersonal or non-theistic. So there are some religious systems where it is a theistic religion. There they think that's what the definition of this personalist is. So there, because Swamiji was a lecturer in America, and there were, in addition to Christianity, so many subsects which had their own teachings and philosophical ideas. So Swamiji is referring to some of them in his talks. So here the personalist means this: those who believe God in addition to people are persons only. That means thinking being, thinking, willing, feeling being, that's all, and nothing beyond. But in Hinduism, in Vedanta, the Atman is an impersonal also, in addition to being person. Atma, similarly God also, right? So this, both dimensions are there. When he thinks, when he hears this idea philosophically put, that is infinite expansion, what does it mean? So person, when somebody becomes infinite, when it's said, they become frightened because their only idea is, okay, so doing some good things, etc. And then, so such things, compassion, do good to people, and these are their ethical ideas, moral and ethical ideas. But when you say infinite expansion, they get frightened, because somebody, what does it mean, a person becoming infinite? Because they have no idea of Atman, the spirit, the Atman behind the mind. So that is not there. Atman is infinite, is it not? So they don't understand. Now that infinite nature in the conditioned person, it is conditioned. In the bound person or the ordinary person, it is conditioned. At least the feeling is so, on the surface it is so. When that is removed through a sadhana or knowledge, etc., so the original nature, which is infinite, is realized. So that is the idea. Now, but these people do not have that philosophical teaching that there is the human being has the dimension, infinite dimension, the spiritual dimension. So when you say the person, when he grows in unselfishness and attains infinite expansion, they get frightened because this is the background. So, but after all, Swami says, if he preaches morality, after all, he teaches the very same idea, but he puts no limit to the unselfishness of man. Theoretically, they have to say so. Otherwise, we cannot say your unselfishness stops at, let's say, so and so. Can it be said in a moral system? It cannot be. So, continuing, suppose a man becomes perfectly unselfish under the personalistic system, that is some theistic religion or sect tradition. How are we to distinguish him from the perfected ones in other systems? He has become one with the universe, and to become that is the goal of all. Only the poor personalist has not the courage to follow out his own reasoning to its right conclusion. Here, so their predicament is pointed out. So it is not possible to recognize or distinguish a person who has realized unselfishness or absolute unselfishness through through the theistic path, that is the personalist path, compared to the other path, which, let's say, Vedanta, right? So that's what Swamiji says. Karma Yoga is the attaining through unselfish work of that freedom, which is the goal of all human nature. Every selfish action, therefore, retards our reaching the goal, and every unselfish action takes us towards the goal. That is why the only definition that can be given of morality is this: that which is selfish is immoral, and that which is unselfish is moral. So, important point here. Swamiji says, Karma Yoga is the attaining through unselfish action of that freedom, which is the goal of all human nature. So, in simply put, Karma Yoga, the main thing is unselfish action, unselfish work. Of course, work need not be physical only. It is at all the three levels: Kaya, Vacha, Manasa, that is in thought, word and deed, physical deeds. Swamiji says, every selfish action therefore retards our reaching the goal. That is, it will take us in the opposite direction. It retards our reaching the goal of freedom. And every unselfish action takes us towards that goal of freedom. Now, in this connection, so he gives the only definition that can be given of morality, therefore. So now we should remember, Swamiji made one statement earlier, that is, the struggle towards freedom is the groundwork of all morality, of unselfishness. Right? So this statement was made in the beginning of this para. Now you see the conclusion of that, the implication, that is, this is the only criteria to define the morality. So all that is selfish is immoral, and that which is unselfish is moral. So based on that criteria, Swamiji is now giving a definition almost, and this is universally applicable irrespective of the culture, the tradition, the religion, the country, etc., etc. Right? Now, in this connection, we should also recall in the earlier chapter, Swamiji mentioned when the topic was virtue and vice in the chapter on what is duty. So Swamiji was talking about virtue and so that which is duty, so will be virtue. That which is not duty, somebody gets into what is not one's duty, and definitely it will lead into some vice, is it not? Unvirtue and immoral it could be, right? Now, so in this connection, so that duty, that concept of duty varies according to the time, place and person, desha kala patra, right? And also one's position in society, birth, etc. So now in that connection Swamiji made, but universally one thing is recognized, that is ahimsa. That is, ahimsa is virtue irrespective of the duty of the person, the station of the person, birth of the person, or its social position, etc., and as well as the country or the religious tradition, etc. Whatever it is, that is one universal virtue, that is not to injure others in thought, word and deed, right? So, and here of course it is a little broader definition. of morality itself, that is that which tends towards selfishness. Any action or thought, word which takes the individual towards or which is selfish in nature. So now, after having explained what is unselfishness, now so this definition is being given, that is anything which retards this movement towards the goal, that is freedom, is selfish and so is not moral, right? So in this way the criterion or the definition is drawn. Anything which retards this movement of the person, of the living being towards the goal, towards the freedom, is selfish, is not unselfish, so is selfish and so is immoral. So morality is now linked to our movement towards the goal, right? So this is to be seen. Usually, unless we take up the religious literature, till then life is determined by some relative considerations. Somebody may say life, so they will decide many things. They are decided on, let's say, career, wealth, this or that, some achievement, some business, etc. That decides, that is the reference point for their life. Of course, there are some conditions, some rules, and some traditional or more cultural mores, ethos within the country or the culture where they live, that to some extent that holds it. But the more deciding factor or the reference path, we can say, or the reference to decide, to guide a person is these relative considerations of career or wealth or business or achievement as something, etc. But once this spiritual knowledge is gained, you, at least theoretically, when they understand and see the truth of it, and the truth of it, when they understand it and appreciate it, that we can say, usually that is called the first awakening. In many of the traditions they call it the first awakening, they call it. So when they understand it, so now there is a reference point to guide the life of people, right? How? So depending on what stage a person is now, what are their duties, at least there is some gross, at least a broad guidance is there. So even though in the details they may be wrong, but at least the direction is correct, is it not? Of course, in a broader sense, even the other people we saw, even the people, those who are spiritually ignorant, spiritually not aware, even their path is also like that, because the whole system of the society is such that, developed such that they take us through these lessons of life, and takes him higher and higher through higher and higher duties, and then that's how they train, they groom the individual. That's how most of the, or we should say all the societies are built up, though there may be some inaccuracies in the modes and some of the cultural patterns and the teachings or the ethics, but still, broadly speaking, this is how it is, and we saw it. And I can but I think I'll read out the exact passage in the chapter on what is duty. Swamiji says, the whole organization of society has thus been developed, consciously or unconsciously, in the realms of action and experience, where by limiting selfishness we open the way to an unlimited expansion of the real nature of man, right? That is, so the whole organization of society has been thus developed to guide people on this path, broad path of higher and higher duties. If those who are at the lower ranks of the education and culture, they will have the ordinary ideas or the ordinary types of duties, or the duty meaning, of course, they go through such things, and what the society expects them also, those things, right? So those who are more evolved, so even our Hindu idea of Purushartha is also more or less in a broad scheme, it is built on that same idea, right? So this is the implication. Now continuing, but if you come to details, the matter will not be seen to be quite so simple. For example, environment often makes the details different, as I have already mentioned. The same action which one The same action under one set of circumstances may be unselfish, and the other and under another set quite selfish. So we can give only a general definition and leave the details to be worked out by taking into consideration the differences in time, place and circumstances. Time, place and circumstances, that is kala, desha and circumstances. Here we should see as patra, or the person or the persons to whom it is addressed. So here we see this definition, that which is selfish, immoral, and that which is unselfish is moral. So this itself is this definition is given from a higher standpoint, but there could be, let's say, the intermediate the considerations where the person has to go through the ideas, lower ideas of duty, morality, ethics, etc., right? So there could be things which when considered from a higher standpoint, they could be they could be selfish, right? But we have to see to which station grade a person belongs. So accordingly we have to see whether the person is doing the duty which is appropriate to one's station and stage in life, right? So Swamiji says, so these details have to be worked out, to be considered, to be understood, depending on the these three conditions of desha, kala, patra, or the time, place and considerations. They have to be worked out. And even also the various cultures also, they should see how to, and they should form their own ideas of the details they have to work out, right? Continuing, in one country one kind of conduct is considered moral, and in another the very same is immoral, because the circumstances differ. So one example Swamiji is giving here. For example, let's say the traditional ideas or the rules for marriage in different, let's say Hinduism compared to them in you take in Islam, they have a completely different set of rules. There may be some but common ones, but overall when you take, there are a lot of differences, right? So it's cultural difference this is. So if those who are strictly follow the tradition, so then it will be those who are not going as per the rule, as per the tradition, so then it will be immoral, is it not? So also many things go, even we can even come to the ordinary ideas. Let's say dressing modes. Swamiji said elsewhere, Swamiji has said in those days in the Europe, not covering the feet is something bad. They used to see it is something violation of the not the normal custom, right? But that is not so in India even now, more or less, right? So these of course these not so sacrilegious, or so sanctity is not that high as let's say the other ethical or the traditional the religious rules are, but it's still something society as it is a social custom. If somebody is not doing so, something odd it is, right? It may not be immoral, but it is something odd, odd custom in the society. So there are some such variations depending on the culture, depending on country also, right? Continuing, the goal of all nature is freedom, and freedom is to be attained only by perfect unselfishness. Every thought, word or deed that is unselfish takes us towards the goal, and as such is called moral. Now you see, goal of all nature is freedom. Here nature Swamiji is saying so that means we have to understand as both nature. Swamiji is using the Vedantika or the Sankhya idea, the Prakriti, right? So in which when that word is used, we should understand here in the context of freedom, al-mukti, spiritual, these things. So both living beings as well as non-living things are understood as we saw earlier, and the freedom is to be attained only by perfect unselfishness. That applies to people, that every thought, word, deed that is unselfish takes us towards the goal, that and is called moral, which we saw earlier. That definition you will find holds good in every religion and every system of ethics. In some systems of thought, morality is derived from a superior being, God. If you ask why a man ought to do this and not that, Their answer is, because such is the command of God. But whatever be the source from which it is derived, their code of ethics also has the same central idea, not to think of the self, that is the individual self, and to give up that altogether. So ABC. So this definition, that is unselfishness in thought, word, deed, to take us towards the goal, this idea is holds good. That is, it is applicable. It is there in all the religions and also moral and ethical systems. Why ethical system? There are in the Europe and America of earlier century, when Swamiji used to lecture, there were ethical systems, some kind of associations where they are not so religious in color, but they were ethical. They had meaning they had their own rules of conduct, ethics. So they used to meet, and their own like a way of living, you call it. So it's not strictly, let's say, religious, but they probably would have taken some of the teachings from there, and they, in a liberal way, suited to the times, they had put, and then they used to follow that, and people used to subscribe to those ethical movements, and their movements, these were there, and probably even now some are there, but these were prominent in the earlier century, in probably the century when Swamiji was speaking there. So that's why Swamiji uses this also, religions and every system of ethics, Swamiji uses this. So in some systems of thought, morality is derived from a superior God. So in all the Semitic religions, so we have the ethics or the moral rules are given by God. That's what the tradition is. We have when Moses received 10 commandments, it was a clear case. So he received it from the God, and so these are the fundamental ideas for them. And similarly, so they say the source or the religious idea is that the source is God. And if you ask why you should do or why you should not do this thing, so they say that this is the rule and this is the rule of God. That's the idea. So, but whatever be the source from which it is derived, the code of ethics also has their code of ethics also has the same central idea, not to think of the individual self. Some uses the self here, that is the lower self or the limited self, but to give it up, or not to strengthen that, or take the contrary, that is cultivate the thoughts and emotions which are contrary to strengthening the lower nature, thus limited conceptions of our existence, right? Continuing. And yet some persons, in spite of this high ethical idea, are frightened at the thought of having to give up their little personalities. So same again, these as we saw the personalist earlier, some of these theistic religions, some of them, those who do not have this idea, mainly of Atman, or the infinite nature of the essence of person, the Atma, or call it Atma or some other name, which is of infinite. So when you say that infinite expansion, these ideas of infinite expansion, give up the the little personality, that is the limited individual personality. When we tell them we have to give up this individual nature, the limited nature, so because they are not taught, they are not exposed to these ideas, they become frightened. So it used to happen when Swamiji used to lecture there. So that is why Swamiji is raising these ideas. So because why? Because their conception is what? As it said, so do good and be compassionate, have sympathy, help people, charity, and these things. And one day we will have, when the death comes or the end of the life comes, so people will go to heaven and live with God. And so these are the ideas, right? Now when we say give up the personality, what does it mean? Will I die? So the fear, so that fear is there. So Swamiji is referring indirectly to this idea, the fear of death or fear of non-existence. When we say give up the little personality, what is meant is to give up the limited nature and regain the original nature. So that is meant, but they get frightened because they do not understand the infinite nature of the person. We may ask the man who clings to the idea of little personalities to consider the case of a person who has become perfectly unselfish, who has no thought for himself, who does no deed for himself, who speaks no word for himself, and then say where himself is. That himself is known to him only so long as he thinks, acts, or speaks for himself. If he is only conscious of others, of the universe, and of the all, where is his himself? It is gone forever. So, here Swamiji says, those if we have to ask these people, those who had those beliefs of that theistic ideas or the personalistic ideas, what will happen? Let's say of a person who has become perfectly unselfish, who doesn't. We have seen these cases in Buddhism, even Jainism, Hindu, these things. Why so? Even in the other religious traditions also, those who have really attained attained spiritual evolution or the illumination, so they used to feel the oneness, right? Not just their limited thing, limitedness was gone. Their spirit was free. They used to feel the identity with God. So if we ask them, that they hardly are conscious of themselves, the body or their mind or their own wants, because they have gone beyond personal likes, personal desires, personal achievements or ambitions, whatever. All these considerations are gone. Now what we will be conscious of when these are gone? Simple, right? Is it not? When these personal considerations are gone, so what will we be conscious of? Very rarely, except for a bare minimum bodily existence. Person will be thinking of either the God or about the macrocosm. That means the whole society together, right? So that's what it is. Swamiji said in a different language the same thing, that himself, so-called one's own consciousness, is known to him money, the person who has attained this perfect unselfishness, known to him only so long as he thinks, acts and speaks for himself. If he is only conscious of others, of the universe and of the all, where is that himself or the individual consciousness is not there? Where is there? So it is all gone forever. So that is the implication, right? So time up. We shall see in the next class. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat.